Tonight on CFTK-TV News, the investigation into the cause of the terrorist helicopter crash has begun. A review is being conducted to see how much BC chicken farmers should be paid, and we look at the testimony of a witness to a Vancouver hotel burning down.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cale Maslin, and here's what's making news in the Northwest and beyond today. Word has come out to reveal that the Transportation Safety Board has begun looking into the cause of the helicopter crash from earlier this week near Terrace. The helicopter was contracted out by Northern Escape Heliskiing and resulted in the deaths of 3 people and got 4 others seriously injured. Northern Escape Heliskiing's co-owner, John Forrest, has said that the helicopter had no mechanical issues before the crash happened. As for the investigation, in the most ideal case, it could take around 250 days to determine the crash's cause, but if it isn't ideal, such a search could potentially end up lasting for a few years. And if the safety board decides that a more thorough examination of the wreckage is required, parts of the helicopter will be collected and then transported to the board's labs in either Ottawa or in Richmond. The BC Coroner Service said that there were 2,511 suspected illicit drug deaths last year, the highest annual toll ever recorded, and places like Terrace, the Northwest and Northern Interior had some of the highest death rates. Chief Coroner Lisa Lapointe said almost 14,000 people have died since BC declared a public health emergency back in April 2016. The surging death toll is reportedly a direct result of the powerful opioid fentanyl, which continues being the main driver in drug deaths. Lapointe also said thousands of the deaths were preventable if the focus were shifted from policing and punishment to the underlying reasons for drug use like pain, trauma, and mental health issues. According to a report that was publicly released by the Equity Metals Company, their exploration efforts of what's called their Silver Queen property has brought forth some very positive results. The results in question came from drilling 26 core holes last year, which is said to have shown their existing deposits can be extended a lot. The property is located just outside of Houston, and those recent drilling results on a pair of targets should reportedly excite their shareholders with more of these types of results. And even more word on their last 6 holes drilled in 2023 are still reportedly set to come out a bit later. Stillatin First Nation and Nadlay Wooten chiefs stated that they are expressing deep sympathy to those who have lost their jobs following the closure of a sawmill in Fraser Lake. West Fraser Timber recently said that it's permanently closing its Fraser Lake sawmill after an orderly wind down, and the closure will affect around 175 employees. Chief Robert Michel of the Stillatin First Nation also said the closure will cause a dire economic impact in his community, with many livelihoods depending on it. The statement says both of the nations are calling on BC to extend some resources to their nations to allow for training so that they can get work in other sectors. Coming up next, UBC's medical department has made changes to eye doctor training. Welcome back. The medical school at UBC has made a series of changes to the program training new eye doctors. It comes after a report found historic and ongoing sexual harassment among other issues. CTV's Penny Daflos uncovered the report, which includes some serious and disturbing details.
It's the result of a freedom of information battle after whistleblowers within the program contacted me. They say students and trainees felt unsafe and were even sexually harassed and touched by an instructor. This report is the result of 70 interviews within the program and prompted UBC to make changes in the ophthalmology department. One section is heavily redacted, but it references repeated complaints made to administrators that were brushed aside and minimized. While 20% of instructors at the school were described as excellent, 20% who were problematic led report author Renee Miller to describe the educational environment as not safe for students. A presentation she made to senior department members outlined historic cases, but also ongoing harassment, including non-consensual sexual contact during surgical procedures. Other allegations include sexist and racist jokes and calling students stupid or laughing at them in front of peers and clinical staff. Despite several requests, UBC would not make anyone available for an on-camera interview and sent me an email statement instead. It reads in part, We understand the profound seriousness of the concerns raised, and what we heard was unacceptable. We acknowledge that the learning environment was seriously negatively impacting our trainees. UBC insists it has made a lot of changes since the report was presented in 2022, including training and reassigning students to other instructors. You may remember the School of Medicine was at risk of losing its accreditation to have a program for eye doctors, but UBC has managed to keep that so it can continue to take new ophthalmology students. Penny Daflos, CTV News, Vancouver.
A proposal to build 13,000 new units to densify a neighborhood on Vancouver's west side is one step closer to going ahead. City Council unanimously voted in favor of a policy statement for the development of the Jericho lands. CTV's Martin McMahon reports.
For the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, this proposal represents what they call a generational opportunity to reaffirm their relationship with the land. And given the housing crunch, the promise of 13,000 units as part of this Jericho Lands development proposal is what many pro-housing advocates have been shouting for.
And our objective is to get, we're no different, and I said in my comments to the council, is we have the same problems of City of Vancouver, the province and the country with lack of housing.
But not everyone feels it's the right approach. One of the major complaints during public consultation has been about the level of density proposed, and in particular the heights of some of the buildings.
The large towers next to a major park is also a major concern. I mean, we have Jericho Park, which is used by all of Vancouver and all of the lower mainland that come here, and having multiple large towers up to 50 stories casting shadows on the park, I think, is just not appropriate.
The First Nations involved understand there will be disagreements and tension, but feel these differences can be worked out.
It's to work together. It's to hear everybody. You know, we all live in the same city. We're not going anywhere. They aren't going anywhere. So we have to find a way to live, work, and play together. You know, that's one of our priorities.
As for the next step, city staff will put together an official development plan and carry out technical studies ahead of any potential rezoning. Martin McMahon, CTV News, Vancouver.
Now to explosive testimony from a witness who owned a business inside the Winters Hotel. Nina Pessoin describes the day of the deadly fire, the building's blocked escape routes, and useless fire extinguishers. She also swore under oath that her warnings that people were still inside the SRO were ignored. CTV's St. John Alexander has the latest.
One of the businesses destroyed by fire in April 2022 was a leather shop owned by Neda Passioni. At the coroner's inquest, she described the moment the fire started and how her husband tried to put it out, but not a single fire extinguisher was working. He said they were all empty. There were 8 of them on the second floor, and we tried every single one of them. They were empty.
Do you believe if they were full, had they been full, this would have been permissible?
Yes, if those sprinklers were on and those fire extinguishers were full, none of this would happen.
Dennis Gay and Marianne Garlow were killed in the fire. Passioni knew them well. Garlow would head out every morning to do her shopping, and that included the day of the fire.
I still remember what she was wearing. I remember her response to my hello. I remember her groceries in her hand. I remember all of that. So this is something that's going to stay with me, and I'm coping with it.
And so when she didn't see them leave the building, she swears she let firefighters know. Me and my husband went to the fire chief. We personally went there and we said, there are people up there. They didn't make it. I don't know. We got really ignored. We got ignored. 2 bodies were found in the wreckage 11 days after the fire. Earlier during testimony, a tenant described not knowing there was a fire at all, only hearing glass breaking. Did you hear a fire alarm going off? No. Did the sprinklers go off? No. Did anyone come to your room and knock on the door? No. And I was like 3 doors from the office. Both Garlow and Gay are described as friendly, compassionate people.
And she was a mother. She was a true mother. I cannot even imagine. She saved her son's life with the last breath she had.
Trapped on an upper floor, Garlow couldn't get out, but was determined her son would escape through the window. St. John Alexander, CTV News, Vancouver.
A review is underway to decide how much BC farmers are paid for the chicken that they produce. But as CTV's Shannon Patterson reports, the restaurant industry is warning that the increase would be passed on to customers.
The price you pay for chicken at the supermarket isn't only determined by how much the store wants to charge. Under BC's current supply management formula, BC farmers get a set rate per kilogram of chicken they produce.
Chicken thighs are $17 per kilogram in the grocery stores. For the same period, BC farmers were getting $2.21 per kilogram. So that's a 669% markup on thighs, which the consumer experiences, but the farmer never sees.
With costs for feed, transportation, and maintenance skyrocketing, BC farmers say it's time for a new formula that pays them more.
It's our position that it's imperative that we have a cost recovery model which recognizes all of the costs that farmers have and pays them for it.
Late last year, the BC Chicken Growers Association made that pitch to the BC Farm Industry Review Board, which will determine what changes, if any, will be made to the pricing formula. And farmers aren't the only ones anxiously awaiting a decision.
Competitively priced chicken is a huge determinant of success for restaurants. I mean, it's on 80% of our menus, and the restaurant industry actually purchases about 40% of all BC chicken produced.
Restaurants Canada says if chicken farmers make more, everyone who buys their product will have to pay more.
For the average consumer in BC, it's going to add $1 to the cost of a kilo of chicken breast that you buy in the store. So it's not just impacting restaurateurs, it's impacting all British Columbians.
So Von Schelwitz wrote to the Farm Industry Review Board asking it to reject the farmers' calls for a new chicken pricing formula.
And we're completely shut out of the process. They wouldn't even bring our letters or our arguments forward to the board.
Now he's urging the provincial government to get involved.
We're just asking governments of all levels to please help keep these costs in check so that our industry can finally recover from the pandemic.
Restaurant owners argue they can't endure higher prices. Farmers counter they can't make a living under the current system. It's unclear when a decision will be made on the cost of BC chicken. Shannon Patterson, CTV News, North Vancouver.
Turning to tonight's weather, the North Coast is likely to see a chance of showers at a low of around 6 degrees. The Terrace-Kitimat area is currently projected to see periods of rain as well as a low of 3 degrees. And the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District is set to be mainly cloudy and their low will be -6 degrees. On the North Coast, the week for them is supposed to see mostly just rain as well as maybe some flurries, in addition to a high going between 11 and 4 degrees. In the Terrace-Kitimat area, the upcoming week should see essentially all rain, but with potentially snow and some slight sun at the end of it, and their high should shift from 0 to 7 degrees. And in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, their next week or so is expected to consist of a combination of rain, snow, and flurries, with the high bouncing between 8 and -2 degrees. Checking out the highways now, visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is slippery sections, utility work, compact snow, as well as a bit of maintenance, plus the Usk Ferry is out of service and the cable car is in effect. Highway 35 and 118 have some slippery sections too. Highway 37 has slippery sections as well, while also having compact snow, as well as various bits of maintenance and even fog patches. 37A has slippery sections, some more fog patches on the Nishka Highway, and the Telegraph Creek Road has slippery sections of its own. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, old flyers are showing how much grocery prices have increased. Welcome back. Some old grocery store flyers are highlighting the rise in food prices that's happened in the last few years. A package of bacon today is on sale for $4.99. 4 years ago, it was just $2.88 for 375 grams. But that's just one example. CTV's Raheem Ladani reports.
$1.88 blueberries. I know there's cheaper in town.
Flip through flyers, and it doesn't take long to realize food prices aren't what they used to be, which means a trip to the grocery store now involves having a plan.
I have 2 credit cards, and I pay them off every month, but I manage. I put one grocery thing on one, and when that date is due, and then I put the other one on the other, so that they're at different times, and I can pay them off at different times. So I have a whole plan of managing.
Yes, food inflation is a reality, but just how big is the disparity from years past?
Looking at this now, and I think I even have some of those items in here, it's, we're 3, 4, 5 times as much.
Take a look at this food basics flyer from the year 2020, advertising a package of bacon for $2.88, name brand cream cheese less than $3, and 2 packages of Doritos for $5.
These prices are very enticing, and I would probably be buying more than a few days at a time if this was the case.
While those prices 4 years ago would certainly help people's pocketbooks today, how about traveling even further back to the summer of 2009, where shoppers could buy grapes, chicken legs, and even eggs, all for 99 cents.
Taking a picture in time is important to appreciate what's been happening the last several years. But at the end of the day, we should expect food prices to continue to rise.
However, with higher prices impacting shoppers, industry experts believe grocers should start offering better deals to build back customer loyalty.
We are expecting many of the products that are being displayed in that picture to be more affordable, just to get people back
into their store as shoppers search for the best price. Raheem Ladani, CTV News.
There's a growing push in the United States to make it harder for children to access social media. Lawmakers from New York to Florida are taking action, and in some cases, it's getting pretty strict. ABC's Lionel Moyes has the details.
Lawmakers in Florida have approved what could become the most strict crackdown on social media in the country. A bill passed by the House would ban anyone under age 16 from signing up for most social media platforms, regardless of whether they have their parents' approval.
It's like a digital fentanyl, and even the most plugged-in parent or attuned teen has a hard time shutting the door.
The bill, which passed with bipartisan support, does not specify which platforms would be affected, but it targets any company that tracks user activity, allows children to upload content, or uses design features like endless scrolling, which critics say encourages compulsive use.
They're just taking advantage of kids growing up.
Opponents say the bill infringes on parental rights and will face First Amendment challenges in court. The ACLU saying the internet, including social media platforms, contains vast amounts of constitutionally protected speech for both adults and minors. Meanwhile, in New York City,
we are the first major city in America to take this step.
The mayor has now designated social media as an environmental toxin and public health hazard. The city's health department issuing an advisory that cites declining mental health among young people. But social media companies like Meta, which owns Instagram and Facebook, have long touted their improved security features and parental controls to protect children. And supporters say social media has real benefits, allowing teens to connect and find people with like interests. Lionel Moyes, ABC News, New York.
Apple has rolled out a new safety feature that can help protect your money and photos if your iPhone happens to be stolen. As NBC's Stephanie Gosk reports, it comes after a rash of iPhone thefts, all using the same trick to take over your device.
A new security setting from Apple hoping to stop a specific and insidious new iPhone crime. Thieves trick people into exposing their iPhone passcodes, often late at night at bars, then steal their phones. With a passcode, they can change Apple ID passwords and Face IDs, so they can take lots and lots of money.
I have heard from many victims that they said up to $10,000, $30,000.
How many numbers?
6. Wall Street Journal tech reporter Joanna Stern uncovered the crime trend.
We revealed that this was happening in multiple cities across the U.S., happening around the world as well, but definitely an uptick in these crimes happening in the U.S. right now.
And Apple appears to have taken notice. The new stolen device protection setting restricts access with the phone's passcode, instead requiring Face or Touch ID for multiple settings, including Apple ID accounts and the iPhone's iCloud keychain, which many people use to store banking passwords. For some settings, when the phone is not in a usual location like home or work, the user will need Face or Touch ID and then have to wait another hour to use biometrics again before getting access. It is a bit of a hassle, but is it worth it for more protection?
If you had heard from as many victims as I had who have lost everything, then you would enable this security feature.
And now we turn our attention to the stock market's pre-closure. The Canadian dollar is down 1/10 of a cent, the price of gold is up $3.90, oil is up $1.12, natural gas is down 6 cents, aluminum is up $1.50. In Toronto, the TSX is up 20.98 points, the Venture Index is down 1.32, in New York, the Dow Jones is up 79.53, and the Nasdaq is up 14.13. Still ahead, we'll look at the latest ringside report on the Canucks. Welcome back. The Vancouver Canucks are a game away from the All-Star break after they hosted the St. Louis Blues last night. Despite their loss in that game, it's been a stellar first half of the season as the team and fans are riding high on success and momentum that they're hoping to continue. Here's CTV's Ben Nesbitt with this week's ringside report.
Around the Chicago net, out the near side, Andrei Kuzmenko spinning one in front, they score!
Partway through the season, and goals like this keep coming. The All-Star break is around the corner, and the Canucks find themselves among the league's elite. A drastic rise from last year, beyond the expectations of most. But their bench boss, still not fully satisfied.
There's things to correct to get to where we want to go.
Regardless of how the next week plays out, Vancouver will enter the 9-day break at the top of the Pacific Division. Vacation is on the horizon, but Tocchet wants locker room leaders to keep everyone's heads in the game.
You're looking for the leadership group to really help us out on this, like to make sure they're ready to go, make sure they run the room. I think it's important. Sometimes coaches got to stay out of it.
Here's Hughes attacking from the side. He shoots, he scores!
The Canucks will have a league-high 5 All-Stars tapped ahead to Toronto, as well as their coach.
Everything has gone right and then some, starting with health, right? All this team's best players have been healthy all the way through. Then their best players have been their best, right? Whether it's Demko or Pettersson or Miller or Hughes, they've all played at an incredible level.
Giving the fan base hope that maybe, just maybe, it's the year they go all the way. Ben Nesbitt, CTV News, Vancouver.
The union representing transit supervisors for Coast Mountain Bus Company says it will end up launching a new 72-hour strike, taking Metro Vancouver buses out of operation if a tentative deal isn't reached by next week. A 2-day shutdown of bus services ended just yesterday. This warning comes after the BC government put a special mediator in place to try and end the dispute. CUPE Local 4500 said it welcomes the appointment of Vince Reddy, but if a tentative agreement on a new contract for about 180 supervisors isn't reached by 12:01 a.m. on February 3rd, they'll withdraw services for 3 days. That's all of our news for now. From all of us here at CFTK-TV News, I'm Cale Maslin. Thanks for watching. We will see you next time.